Okay, so with that said, let me show you some rules that we're going to be using. I'm just going to lay out the punctuation rules as I consider them. So as we begin looking at these grammar notes, we have a little phrase here that I want to bring to your attention. Mastery is not perfection. Mastery means understanding one's mistakes to the point of no longer making them. Okay, so I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to understand the mistakes that you've made on the test in such a way that those mistakes are no longer current mistakes. They're past mistakes. Okay, let's talk about some of the rules of grammar. What we have here is two ways of thinking about the rules of punctuation that you'll need on the test. Okay, and there's a couple caveats, but this is right in front of you, some of the most important stuff you need for the test. So I have this set here of what I call equivalencies. What do I mean by that? I mean that on the test, these things are equal. And the power of that is if you see two equivalent concepts, two equivalent punctuation marks on two different answer choices and everything else is the same, you can automatically cross off those two answers, disregard them, learn more about the sentence as a knock-on effect, and be halfway done with the question. Since there's only 4 answer choices, if there's 2 that are functionally equivalent, they're both out. Okay, that's really, really powerful. So let's talk about equivalencies. A semicolon is equivalent to a period, is equivalent to comma plus fanboys. And fanboys is an acronym, meaning just a word made up of smaller words. An acronym standing for the following words. F for the word for, A for and, N for nor, B for but, O for all or, Y for yet, S for so. So all 3 of these, semicolon, period, comma, all separate 2 full sentences. There's a little bit of a caveat for that with the semicolon and a caveat for comma fanboys. I'll talk about those in a second. But all I mean by caveat is an exception. There's an exception to each of those rules. But generally speaking, those 3 things are equivalent. The second set of equivalencies is that a long dash equals a colon. Both of these require a full sentence up front and can have anything after. By anything, I mean a full sentence, a single word, a list, a fragment. That's what I mean by anything. The other equivalency, and last one, is that 2 long dashes are equivalent to 2 commas are equivalent to 2 parentheses, or a set of parentheses. These set information apart in the middle of the sentence, and they set it apart from the rest of the sentence. So I'll oftentimes call these parenthetical phrases. Even if they use long dashes or commas, I'll call them parenthetical phrases. Those are all the equivalencies. Okay, now what we have below is exactly the same information as I've already given you, but laid out in a slightly different way. Here, IC means independent clause. IC equals independent clause. Okay, and what that means is something that can be a full sentence in and of itself. DC is going to mean dependent clause. And all that I mean by that is something that could not be a full sentence in and of itself. Okay, so an IC is a full sentence or an independent clause. A DC is a dependent clause, something that could not be a full sentence. Okay, and what I have here in this set of brackets, what I have is every possible version, every possible combination of 2 clauses that you'll see on the test. Okay, and I think that you'll see in the world. All right. And so the first set is if you have an independent clause and then a dependent clause. And there's 3 options for this. There is a comma, and commas are the most flexible form of punctuation. They can do the most things. You can kind of consider flexibility on when it comes to punctuation with weakness of punctuation. It's not true in life. Flexibility is a form of strength in life. But in terms of punctuation, if something is flexible and can do many things, then it is also weak and can't do the strongest things like separate two full sentences. So commas are flexible. Then we have a long dash and a colon. Now, recall from above that these two are equivalent. And what we have in our first set is a full sentence up front, and then what we have after is a dependent clause. Okay, so that seems perfectly cool because we said we can have anything after a long dash or a colon. Okay, so those three could all work here. These two, long dash and colon, are equivalent. A comma is not equivalent, but in this case, they all function in an acceptable way. Okay? Now, all by itself here, DC, comma, IC. That is, if you have something that cannot be a full sentence, and then you have something afterwards which is a full sentence, or could be a full sentence, an independent clause, the only thing that's acceptable there is a comma. That flexible bit of punctuation that is most flexible but least strong. Okay? Here, this set is precisely equivalent to what I've said above, just laid out in terms of clauses. Part one of the independent clause, oftentimes a subject, then a parenthetical phrase in three forms, parentheses, long dashes, commas, and then part two of an independent clause, often a predicate, often a verb plus an object. So you may recognize some of that language. If not, just think you have the first part of the sentence and the second part of the sentence, and in between you have extra stuff. Okay? So we're only going to do that when we need to do it. We're not going to just, there's all sorts of times you could say, well, this is extra and we don't need it. But we're only going to do that when it truly breaks up something like subject and verb. I'll talk more about that later. The last possibility, so we've seen IC, DC, then we've seen DC, IC, then we've seen a DC in the middle of an IC. The only remaining possibility, if you have two clauses, is two independent clauses, two full sentences. And this may be a surprisingly long list for you. Move up just a little bit so you can make sure that you can see it well. This may be a surprisingly long list for you. But just to be clear, this set, let me see if I can zoom out here for a second, just so you can see everything you need. This set at the bottom, comma, fanboys, semicolon, and period. Okay, that's what I've written up here, that a semicolon, period, and comma, fanboys are all equivalent. And there's also this other set here, a colon and a long dash, which I've told you are equivalent. So note, all five of those work to separate two full sentences. The bottom three are the strongest punctuation and, to some degree, the least flexible. Particularly the period is the absolute least flexible. It's the strongest, but it has the most requirements and the least flexibility. So those three require full sentences on both sides. And then the top two in blue here, they don't require a full sentence on both sides. Indeed, we saw, I'll use blue again, indeed we saw in our first set of clause combinations, an independent-dependent combination with long dash and colon. Here I have independent with long dash and colon. So a little bit more flexibility and less requirement, so more flexibility, but also a little bit less strength perhaps, right? In a certain sense, you could say that those are very strong and flexible, right? A sort of middle ground between commas, which are flexible, and a period, which is inflexible, right? But now we've just seen the layout in two different ways, both the punctuation as a set of equivalencies, and then every possible combination of two clauses, independent, dependent, independent, dependent in the middle, or two independent clauses. Okay, those are all the punctuation rules you need. I'm going to get to some of the exceptions that I've listed and some clarifications that I've listed below. But one other thing that you'll absolutely need right away is how to tell if something is a full sentence. Okay? So let's talk about that. Now, to be clear, you might be saying, I know what a full sentence is. It's a subject and a verb, or it's a subject and a predicate. I had this experience when I was teaching in those early days, and I didn't have any sort of formal training in grammar, or very little formal training in grammar, probably from middle school. And there I was as a freshman in college, quite young. I can't really grow much of a beard now, and I really couldn't grow a beard then. So I really looked young, and it was really hard to command a room full of people who were only 2 years younger than me. And I can remember someone asking me when I laid out some rules, like, well, what is a full sentence? And I gave them a basic answer. It's a subject plus a verb. Right? And then it was a 3-hour seminar. The rest of the seminar was just replete with 17-year-olds just raising their hand and giving examples of non-full sentences to the laughs of their peers and the chagrin of me as their instructor. I kind of had to realize, okay, yeah, there's so many exceptions to what makes a full sentence, right? And I'll give you some examples. Like, I could use a lot of words that include a subject and a verb and have it not be a full sentence. So, and you'll know this intuitively once I say it. So I could say, I was walking down the street the other day when I realized something that I hadn't seen before, which was, okay, that's fairly obvious, right? That's not a full sentence. That's not a complete thought, even though there were many spots potentially where I could stop. There was the potential for a full sentence in there. But as that existed, that was not a full sentence, right? I could also give you a sentence that doesn't have a subject and is a full sentence, like, pass me the pizza, right? That's a command. Or even just run. That's just one word and it's a full sentence because it's a command. It has an implied subject, which is you. Okay. So what can we say that's stable and without exception that makes for a full sentence? That's where I came up with this idea. Okay. So you pretend you walked into the room and you say to your best friend, it's got to be your best friend, by the way. It's got to be someone who knows what's going on in your life. Hey, I've got to tell you something. I know it's random, but your friend says, what is it? Now spit out the phrase. Did you tell them something, or are they still waiting? So you could simplify all that to, hey, guess what? And then spit out the phrase. As long as you understand that it could be something random, it could be something out of the blue, and if your friend is ready to say, interesting, or oh my goodness, or okay, or what? If your friend is ready to say that and is no longer waiting, then you do have a full sentence. So, for instance, hey, guess what? They're here. That's a full sentence. Hey, guess what? It happened. That's a full sentence. Hey, guess what? Duck. Right? Those are all full sentences. Right? Hey, guess what? When I was walking down the street the other day and thinking carefully about my life, your friend would be waiting for you. Wait, what are you saying? Did you have something you were going to tell me? Right? So this is how you tell something is a full sentence, and that is called a heuristic. It's a strategy absent full and complete knowledge. Okay, so that heuristic will be very, very useful. And one other thing I want to bring up right away is that there are these words that make things that were potentially full sentences into not full sentences. I call them sentence wreckers. WH words. When, while, which, where, who, whom, whether. There's probably more. But, I could say, I believe in truth. Or I could say, when I believe in truth, or while I believe in truth, or whether I believe in truth, and none of those are full sentences anymore, right? So something that was a full sentence becomes not a full sentence. Okay. So now we have a basic framework to think about our punctuation rules. And there's a lot more to say. We're going to get into some examples, however. So I guess really briefly, let me bring up the other couple of exceptions. The semicolon can be used as part of a complex list. So in this highlighted piece, I have, here are my favorite lists, full sentence, colon. Now I have a list after. But my list is made up of entities which include commas already, right? So you can see this comma here and here, right? And then you can see the semicolon here, right? Semicolons and commas. So sometimes I'll describe this as a super comma. That is to say, the commas are busy doing some work here in this little list, and here in this other list. So the semicolons help us see that we have three separate entities and that those entities are complex. They have multiple pieces, right? So the commas are within each of the entities, and those entities have, organization within them, right? So the semicolon acts as a super comma to say, yeah, red, comma, green, comma, and blue, but we have something totally different going on next, right? So we're not just going to use a comma so that you think red, green, blue, good, evil, sunny, rainy, cloudy are all kind of at the same level, right? No, they're separate lists, right? So a super comma is a semicolon that functions to separate smaller entities that use commas from each other within a larger list. Okay, that's really important. You'll see some examples of that. I'm going to jump into some examples now. So there's a lot more to say about punctuation, but I think it's best said in the context of examples. So let's get started.